And welcome to episode number 10 of the QCast. I'm really excited to go to Holland, Michigan today to Brian Morehouse, the head women's basketball coach at Hope College. And Brian, you got to celebrate milestones. I know in coaching there are milestones, and this is episode number 10 of the QCast. There will be a day when that number's like 1,000, but you got to celebrate what you got, right?
I love that. I'm disappointed I wasn't number one, but I'll take being in the top 10. So that's good.
Well, the top 10 is a place that you're very comfortable being, and we'll talk through the incredible success of your program. For those that don't know Brian, well, everyone in Division III does. I was just thinking to myself that if there's a Mount Rushmore of Division III men's and women's coaches, I mean, you're right in the front and center of that thing. Some pretty incredible, Brian. I'm just looking here at your record at Hope. 627-90. That's an 87% winning percentage over 25 years. I mean, heck, let's just start there. What an incredible run it has been for you over an extended period of time. Just talk about this period of success at Hope.
Yeah, I mean, it started off, we inherited a team that was 10-17, and but it wasn't a group of bad players. It was just, they weren't in a great place mentally, and just kind of having to put our imprint. When I say our, I mean, the coaching staffs that I've brought together over the years. And I just think it was a matter of putting what our vision for basketball looked like, and getting players to buy in. And we were able to turn it around pretty quickly. I think we won 15 games our first year, maybe 17 our second year. And then we've had a great run of 20 plus wins, since then for the last 23 years. Although I don't know what this year counts as. But I think that we've been able to find women and families who really want to be a part of the Hope College experience. And when I talk about that, I don't talk about just the basketball part, but also the academics, the community. They bought into our location, the quality of academics. And, we've had an incredible run, not just on the basketball court. And this is where I think the magic sauce comes. But, we've had every kid but 4 graduate in 3.5 to 4 years. In 25 years, every player that's played for me has been in grad school, or been in a job, within basically 3 weeks after they graduated from Hope. So I think that there's a lot of things that go into that success, but I've had great players, and I've been really fortunate. I was talking to my assistant the other day about just having great assistant coaches that I can delegate to, and without having to think about it, just say, you take this part of practice, and it just makes for a stronger program.
And success of your program obviously has a lot to do with the university itself. I have a tremendous respect for Hope College. Growing up in Chicago, I didn't know a lot about Hope. I think the first real time that I did was following Illinois Wesleyan men to Salem, Virginia in 1996. And we both played Rowan on different nights. And I thought that Illinois Wesleyan and Hope fans kind of bonded in a strange way, playing against this great Rowan team. And over the years, I've come to follow Hope a lot on both the men's and women's side. If you would, just talk a little bit about the college. What is Hope all about? Talk a little bit about the school, if you would.
Yeah. Well, I was on the coaching staff for that 96 team with the men. So we were there together. We just didn't know each other. Hope is this incredibly unique combination of incredible academics. We're a Phi Beta Kappa school, which puts us in the top 7% of all schools in the United States. And we were, I think, out ahead of the curve, especially in the sciences long ago. We had a president, we had a provost, we had the dean of our natural sciences who at a very early stage, and I mean, we're talking like 70 years ago, realized that student faculty research and collaboration were really important. And I think that permeates through our whole institution, where It is not just a matter of like going to class and obtaining the information out of a book and a lecture, but it's this interactive experience that I think makes the Hope experience really, really cool. I think you combine in there, like I said before, it doesn't hurt to be on the beach of Lake Michigan. And that location is nice. We've got a great downtown. But the institution itself, the Christian dimension on our campus, which I think is very, very strong, but unique. We're different than some other Christian colleges. I think there is a spectrum of Christian colleges, right? There are some that are Christian in name only, and they don't have really any opportunities on their campus other than maybe a Bible study, randomly. But then you also have, all the way to the other end of things where you have mandatory chapel and those types of things. And I think Hope falls in this really unique area where we're going to embrace young people where they're at, give them tons of opportunities, and say, this is your life. You need to make your faith what it is to you, not what your parents think it should be, not what an institution thinks it should be, but we're going to give you room to grow. We're going to give you tools to grow. And then you are going to be accepted and respected where you stand each and every day. And that's where I've had an incredible experience at Hope, just watching young people come in. And some of them walk into my office and I'm taking notes because I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. I'm going to write that down. And they're so mature in their faith. Then you've got other kids that are like, I don't really know where I stand. I have questions. And, I have the unique opportunity and blessing to be able to, help those kids have a better understanding of what faith is. And that's what I love about Hope, is it's got this great combination of location, academics, academic rigor, churning out these amazing students, and then also being able to incorporate this unique experience on our campus with the faith base.
It really is a great school, and I always think of Hope as, when I think of Division III, I think of there's a group of schools that to me embody Division III, and I think Hope is really on that short list. Fantastic school, and boy, your facilities. I take great pride in the Shirk Center at Illinois Wesleyan,
Sure.
but I'm the first to say that the best basketball venue in Division III is DeVos Fieldhouse. What a great job they did in building that, in making it look and feel like it's been there 100 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, the atmosphere that you guys get at some of these men's and women's games are incredible. Just talk about the building, if you would.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think they did a great job of, I personally love the field house feel. And I think there's an arena feel. I think there's a field house feel to certain places. We definitely have that field house feel. It's a little bit like the Indiana Pacers. If you've ever been there, like it feels like that place. And if you've been to Hinkle and some other great field houses around the United States, the old Jennison Field House, which is a dump, but it was a very unique experience before Michigan State built what basically Tom Izzo has made a legend. But like the fan support is amazing. You talk about we've got this great mix of young families and also this older generation that comes, and season ticket holders, and our men and women have both led the nation. Our men for like 20 some years,
Right,
led the nation in attendance, and the women, since we moved here, have led the nation in attendance. But our men had the unique experience of being in the Civic Center, which was in and of itself one of the more amazing basketball venues ever. And then they move over here, and that was nice for them because it's nice and it's new. Well, I went from the Dow Center, where we didn't have a locker room, we didn't have bleachers, we didn't have anything. I mean, we were in basically Title IX hell of not having what we needed to be successful. And all of a sudden we started winning, and we didn't have enough room. And I still remember, oh, this ties back to our field house, but I still remember when we were building this place, we had a lot of different people in the community that said, well, are you going to continue to play in the Dow Center, or are you going to go over to the DeVos? And they were dead serious. And I was like, what? They're like, well, it's going to be a little embarrassing. Like, there's not going to be enough people there. It's going to feel super empty. And I said, a little field of dreams here, like build it and they will come. And, our parking over at the other place, we had none, zero parking in the other place. Right. So people couldn't get in, the elderly people couldn't navigate the sidewalks, and now we come here and we play in front of 2,500 people. I mean, we're playing in front of more people than most of the Division I programs
Without
in the
question.
state of Michigan. And, I just think if you play a great brand of basketball and you have a great facility like we have, and it is easy to get in and out of for our fans that are older, like they can navigate this place. For our younger families and fans, like there's still enough room where we're not like butt to butt in here, and you can bring your kids and they got room to move around and wiggle a little bit, and yet they can still watch the game. And the concessions are off the charts good. So like, kids are going to love that
Right.
too. But I love the arena feel. I just, it's a great building structurally, but then you add in the people component. And I do think we do a great job of hosting teams that come up here and play us. We'll talk about our hospitality. I've had the great pleasure of, having a long relationship with Coach Smith at Illinois Wesleyan, and she's one of the all-time greats, in my opinion, in Division III women's basketball. And I've played in the Shirk Center. I think that place is cool, but maybe that's because I played in the national championship game, and other than losing that game, it has a good feel to me. But I think just her comments to me about like, we love to come up and play at Hope because of the atmosphere. And so that's high praise coming from a person like her, who has played everywhere against everybody.
And I know she has a special place in her heart for DeVos because she won a national
Yeah.
championship on that floor, and that's something that we won't forget at Wesleyan. Talk about, Brian, the current run that you're on. Not that you haven't been on a run for like 20 years, because the most games you've lost in a season in like 20 years is 5. But you now have won 45 in a row, if my math is correct. Does that sound right? Is the number?
Yeah,
40?
that's.
And
I know that just because they made a big deal of us setting the all-time win record for men's or women's sports
it's
the other
incredible.
day. So
Yeah, 45 in a row. And in fact, I see some tweets that mention Yeshiva's streak, which is at 36 or 7, and people are forgetting that in Division III that Hope is at 45 on the women's side. If that's hard to do, that is super hard to do in a league like the MIAA. That includes, obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the Illinois Wesleyan tournament game last year, which was incredible. Just talk about this run that you guys are on. And after that, I want to get into the fact you haven't been able to finish these runs. So we're going to get into the NCAA next, but 45 in a row. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm in a unique position where I've gone from, basically raising my children, right? They're born, my 2 daughters, they're born, they start going to games when they can't walk or talk, right? So now I'm old enough that I have a daughter that plays for me. She's a sophomore, and she and her roommate, who actually is one of our other good sophomores, both of them play quite a bit. They walked by me the other day and they're like, "Hey, Dad, we were just thinking, we've never lost a college basketball game." and I never thought of that. And that kind of put it in perspective for me. Like, I feel like my daughter's been here for a while, right? COVID has made 2 years feel like 10.
Right.
But I that really kind of blew me out of the water to think that, my sophomore class is not lost at a college basketball game. And of course, they were more like sheepish about it. And I was like, yeah, and if you know what's good for you, you'll keep it that way. So it's been a great run. Obviously, there have been a number of games in there that we could have lost, because our league is very, very good. we've won on last second shots on a number of occasions. I think we got 6 games that we've won in the last 5 seconds,
Yeah.
10 seconds of the game. So obviously we've executed in pressure situations, and the Illinois Wesleyan game, that's one of the great basketball games I've ever been a part of. They played amazing. We were great, and then we were horrible, and then we were great to end the game. And it's just one of the all-time great games that I've ever been a part of. And so there have been a lot of like roller coastery things, but in the end, at the end of the day, it shows up on the winning side of the ledger. And yeah, it's an amazing run.
Let's talk a little bit about the COVID situation and the cancellation. I've had a chance to talk to a lot of coaches on the QCast here about what it was like to play through the pandemic. I have a pretty good feel now about the testing and the uncertainty and the waking up in the morning not sure if you were going to play or not. But I want to talk to you about just the pure cancellation of the tournament this year. I think last year we'd probably agree it is what it is. The world just collapsed on us there that week, right? So you beat Illinois Wesleyan, you're heading to the Sweet 16, and the whole world just changed. The NBA situation and that period of 2 or 3 days were awful. And it probably didn't surprise us at that point that the tournament canceled. But this year, pretty controversial, I believe. And I've had Mike Schauer, the head of the men's basketball national committee, here on the show. And he provided a lot of perspective on the why behind it on the men's side. The women's side is the same reason. Essentially, it came down to a percentage ratio that was put out there that wasn't met. And I've read some of your comments, and make sure I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think you kind of have questioned that. So where did that percentage come from? Whether it was, I think it was 60 maybe. Is that, talk about that, your thoughts on that?
I think it started with fall sports, right? And so there were some fall sports across America, leagues that were still going. We personally did not have teams competing in the fall. And so, the national championships were canceled in the fall. And what they said was, you need 60% to hold a national championship. And so I knew this going in, and I'm not mad. I understand that we didn't reach the percentage. So like, I'm not this angry, bitter, embattled coach. I don't want to say that. I do think it's a difficult thing to explain to 18 to 22-year-olds that just because 40% of the people aren't playing, if we've got 50% that are still playing, why can't that be a feasible national championship with 32 teams in a national tournament, or 48? Maybe not 64, because that's what we do every year.
Right.
But if half that number are playing, let's make it into a 32 team. Half 32. So I think that's been the hard part in just trying to wrap my head around that for my players' perspective. I don't feel bad for me. I think that I want to be clear about that. I've been to multiple Final Fours, and I don't know if there will be more for me or not, but like, I've had that experience.
Right.
I truly feel for the student athletes who are like, well, we can't help it that the East Coast decided not to play for the most part, or California or whatever, but like, there's still 190 teams in the United States that are playing. Like, why can't we have a national tournament? We have more teams playing at the Division III level than what they had playing at the Division II level, and they still, and I think that's the part that hurt our kids the most, was they saw the Division I national tournament without some teams playing in it. They saw the Division II national tournament. They saw NAI have a national tournament. They saw the JUCOs have a national tournament. And so, they just felt picked on. And they just said, if we're going to live our lives with, the fact that X percentage of people aren't participating in whatever, voting, You know, like, does that mean we're not going to have an election when, whatever, 45% of the United States doesn't vote? Like they're like, coach, why pick that random number? And I have good friends in the NCAA, and I'm on the WBCA board. So the last thing I'm doing is slamming any of those people who
Right.
I have great respect for, and the amount of effort and money and time that it takes to pull off an NCAA tournament. Um, I will just, I do want to respect the fact that it's okay for my players to be frustrated, angry, and I want to support them too and say, I get it. Like I get it.
Yeah, and Mike Shower was very clear about how the decision came about with the percentage number, with maybe not as many people willing to host. And so clearly, I think you'd agree that there were big challenges. But what I hear you saying is that it's just a little bit frustrating that there wasn't a way to figure this out when everyone else had their
Well,
tournaments
it's
this year.
it's it's pretty difficult to line up people that are willing to host when they don't know they're going to be in the national tournament.
Right.
Like, unless you're going to try to do what they did at Division II for the most part, and what they did at Division III, which is kind of bubble it up and try to find a way to get 32 teams, and I don't even think it has to be 32. I mean, you could have gone, you could have gone 4 groups of 8 and easily gotten it to a final 8 teams, get it down to 2 teams at each site.
Right.
And we would have been willing to host. I think what we would have done is we would have said, hey, if we don't get in and Trine does, like, Trine would take the host, and we would not be invited to the tournament. Or if we get in and Trine gets in, then we both, could host. I think we had teams that were willing to host. I really do, but I don't think that teams were willing to host if their teams weren't in it, which I understand puts the NCAA in a difficult spot, because, there's like, well, you can't have it both ways. And I'm like, well, but I think we could find ways around that, right? So if you said, all right, for the WEAC, let's just say that we thought they were going to be have a couple super strong teams. All right, we'll give them a host, right? No, that could be Oshkosh, that could be
Right.
Eau Claire, that could be Stevens Point, that could be Whitewater, whatever. Like, okay, so the WEAC is a central location, Hope Trine, central location, Texas, central location. They have a bunch of good teams this year. So, I think that there were ways to do it, but I think there were a lot of things that were going to make it really, really difficult, and maybe pretty doggone expensive.
For sure. Yeah. I just wanted to tackle that because, on your side, the women's side, you're sitting there 2 years in a row
Hmm.
with a legitimate chance to win a national championship. I
Hmm.
mean, the favorite or the number 2 favorite in both of those seasons.
Hmm.
And on the men's side, there's some teams in a similar position, although I
Sure.
don't think there's one with as clear cut of the last 2 years as you. I think Yeshiva was in that situation a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, I'd have to think through that a little bit, but that's got to be very frustrating for your student athletes and all the things that they sacrificed this year to make those games possible, to just
Yeah.
have it end. Um, I,
Yeah.
I hear you. I'm, as a fan of Illinois Wesleyan, I feel the same way on the men's side.
Yeah.
Season ends, you win the CCIW championship. Let's go. Let's go to the
Yeah.
tournament, and then the season's just no more. Very frustrating.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
Um, let's talk about that last NCAA tournament game that you played against Illinois Wesleyan. Uh, what a, what an incredible game! And I thought we had you, Coach. We were up
Hmm.
9 with 4:30 to play.
Hmm.
That game felt so much to me like the men's game in 2012
Hmm.
when the Titans came there, and it felt to me like Kendall Sosa was Jordan Zimmer, and
Hmm.
we're playing number 1. We're up with four to go. Your team played incredible in that final 4:30. Eventually got it
Yeah.
tied with about 2 minutes left. Took a lead. Can you just talk about that game, the atmosphere at DeVos,
Yeah.
and the way that thing finished?
Yeah. Well, the kind of the story is like, we got out to like one of the hottest starts we had of the year. I think we were up 12-1 or 12-2, and like we're playing amazing basketball. And then the wheels came off for about 30 minutes, honestly. Offensively came off, and then we rectified it. Like you said, for the last 5 or 4.5 minutes. But like atmosphere, I mean, again, this was my 25th year this year. I can honestly say I have never been in a better college basketball atmosphere than that game. That I've never heard the DeVos that loud in my coaching career, whether I'm there watching our men or our women. Like, to me, the cool thing was, we always get good crowds, but that one was even better than good. And one of the reasons was we had so many student athletes there for whatever reason. I don't know if everything just sort of fell right with schedules and no spring sports at that moment, being off campus, but like we had so many student athletes there, and I called a timeout at one point, and like we could not hardly communicate in the huddle. And then we walked out onto the floor, and it got louder and louder and louder. And all of a sudden I saw something, and we were inbounding on the other side of the floor on the other end. And I could not communicate to them what I was seeing because it was so loud. And I think that none of us, Illinois Wesleyan or our women have played in that kind of environment. And it was, we won, so obviously we feel better about it, but like it was an incredible experience. And I mean, if you're going to upset number one, you have to have great experience, something great go on that day. And Kendall Sosa was, I think I'd seen her get hot throughout that year on different games, but like we're the number one defensive team in the country.
Right.
Okay. And she hung 30 on us. Like it was one of the bigger, most incredible performances I've ever seen. And finding ways to, we scored a couple down the stretch, ran a couple plays, and finally made a couple shots, and had Kennedy Schoonveld hit some like huge shots. And this tells you that we were a little bit destined to win it, but we're down 5, and we just made a bucket, and then we hit a 3, and now we run a play incorrectly, right? But somehow a kid ends up in the right spot at the right time, and all of a sudden she makes a 3. Like, I'm sorry, but like you misrun a play, and then all of a sudden your team figures it out, and a kid just hits an amazing shot. Lauren Newman, like that's kind of odd. I mean, like that, that the karma is going in your direction in that situation. But yeah, one of the great games I've ever been a part of. I mean, I would put it right up there with our national championship game, and the Final Four in Springfield, Massachusetts. But I do think that the greatest game I ever coached in was against Washington University and Nancy Fahey at DePaul on our way to the national championship in 2006. And I think the final was something like 90-87, and two teams that pride themselves on defense, and like the shot making in that game was just, it was like what we did in the last 4 minutes for 40 minutes. It's just insane. So yeah, it was an amazing experience, Bob. Like that game last year was I'll remember that during my career as a highlight.
And as you mentioned, you've been to multiple Final Fours. You won the national championship in 2005, 2006. That game was played in Springfield, Massachusetts. What was it like to finally hang the banner, after such all these years of knocking on the door, and then to finally hang that banner? What was that like?
Yeah, and we had some great teams that were leading up to that. One of the things, and maybe Coach Smith can talk about this someday too, but like I think that we missed out on a couple Final Fours because we hosted the Final Four. The pressure to get back, like one year they sent us to Texas because they didn't think it was fair that we would host the first round
Right.
and then host the Sweet 16. And then they started to do that after that year, and they allowed teams to do it, but they had some unwritten rule that you couldn't do that. So they sent us to Texas, and we lose to Howard Payne, down there, in one of the most disappointing experiences of my life. But I mean, we felt like we could have been to multiple Final Fours, but I think sometimes the pressure on your athletes to, like, everybody's counting on you to get back. We'll see you next weekend. Like that, some of those pressures were just so monumental. And then to break through and to do it where we didn't host because our men were really good that year in the first round. We were undefeated. We go on the road to DePaul. And so, we're undefeated and probably should have hosted. And, we go on the road to Ohio to Capitol for the first round, go to DePaul for the Sweet 16, and then go to Springfield. We didn't play a home game that year.
Wow.
And we were probably I think at that stage we were number 5 in the nation. But that road, what we always called, that was our Road Warriors team. We beat number 10, number 6, number 3, 2, and 1 to get a national championship, which, just to beat the quality of teams that we beat was one of the really cool things about winning that national championship.
Just a couple more questions for you, Brian, before we finish. I know you have a recruit coming in at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful to your time, as we know that recruiting is the most important thing you got going on.
Absolutely.
Your roster, you have 18 student athletes on your roster. All of them are from Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. While many programs, I'm thinking in the CCIW, Wheaton, looks all over the country for student athletes. What a luxury to have such a hotbed of basketball within a 200-mile radius of your front door to go to those 3 states. You're in a pretty good geographic location to find good women for your program.
We are. Yeah, it's we've been fortunate to be able to expand out of Michigan, number 1, and to recruit the Midwest to get really good players, and but also be able to hold down the fort in our state and get some very high quality players. So, on one hand, and from the NCAA perspective, we're in a terrible spot because distance wise, it kind of messes us up with hosting in the NCAA tournament and some of those things. But from a recruiting standpoint, it's definitely been a great boon, to our success.
And then final question, just about your next season. You have a great senior class. In fact, I thought it was cool that you took a technical and started all of them in one of your final games this year. I think it was against Kalamazoo. With the COVID waiver, and certainly there may be things you can't answer or don't know the answer to. Are any of your key seniors going to take advantage of that and return, or do you not know that yet?
Yeah, we just don't know yet. I mean, I wish I did. And, because of how Division III works and we're not a scholarship program and everything, it's just a big ask, and so I haven't asked. People are like, well, you got to pressure them. You got to encourage them. You got to tell them to stay. Like, we got to make one more run at this thing. I'm like, I can't mess with families' pocketbooks like that.
Yeah.
And, every one of our players already has a job or is into grad school as well. We've got kids that are going to Baylor. We've got kids in the engineering program at University of Michigan. We have engineers that already have jobs. We've got kids that have already got their, accepted into PA or PT school. So, they've run their race. Now, the question is, do they want one more bite at the apple, so to speak? But that has to be a them decision, not a pressure from me or the teammates that are coming back. It truly has to be every kid a personal decision. And, most of them have already decided that they're not coming back. And I'm completely okay with that. They have been 3.7 grade point average is our team grade point average. Like these women have done everything that I could ever hope for as far as, representing our basketball program. If somebody decides to come back, we'll embrace them and we'll love it. But that remains to be seen. But I don't think it'll probably happen that way.
I appreciate the perspective, and we'll certainly be looking here in the off season when we get closer to the fall to see what the roster looks like. Again, to be respectful of time, just a final thought on my end, and that I'm going to turn it to you for any final comments. But what an amazing run for your women's basketball program. I mean, 45 wins in a row. As I started this out with, Mount Rushmore of Division III men's and women's coaches. My guest right here, Brian Morehouse, is on that. 627 and 90, 87% winning percentage, national champion, multiple Final Fours, 45 in a row. Really been an honor, Brian, getting to know you and spending time on the QCast with you. What would you leave the folks that are tuning in with on your end?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the really kind words. It's odd because I don't think of myself in those terms. For me, I think more like Nancy Fahey is on Mount Rushmore. Right. Coach Smith, Shirley Egner at Stevens Point, and there's Chris Huffman at DePauw, Sherry Harrer at Baldwin Wallace, Dixie Jeffers. Those are my people that I think should be on the Mount Rushmore. I've never really thought of myself in those terms or with them, to be perfectly honest, because these are all the people that I guess you could say I grew up, trying to match myself against. Dixie Jeffers just beat my brains in, when I took over the program. Same thing with Sherry Harrer and Chris Huffman, Shirley Egner. Like they just, that's how I've always measured the success of my program, is against those great women leaders in our game. And so to have you mention me with them just means a lot because of how much I think of them. And I think we have a great game in the women's game. I think Division III women's basketball is unique. It's elite. And for those people that go out and watch good women's basketball at the Division III level, they get treated much like the men's side, to this high end where they walk out of there and go, I didn't expect to see that today, and I'll be back. I always say the hardest thing for us to do is get somebody in the gym one time. Like the number of tickets I have bought and given away to people and just said, just come one time. And the next thing you know, they sit in the same seat every time and they come every time. And I think that's the beauty of women's basketball at the Division III level, is we get loyal fans. They're consistent and they love our kids, day in and day out. And then they see them in downtown Holland and they walk up to them and say, you don't know me, but I come to all your games and I love how you play and I can't wait to see you next Saturday. And it makes our kids feel like rock stars. And that's the beauty of the Division III women's game, is that they have these relationships with the people in the community. So, and I followed you for a long time before you probably followed me. And I appreciate what you do to promote the Division III women's game and men's game. I think you're super smart. I think you're really connected. And like, if you put it on your Twitter or you make comments, I'm like, okay, I got to dig into that, because that's a real thing, because he doesn't just throw stuff out there. So I appreciate your knowledge and wisdom as far as Division III is concerned. And thanks for the time that you put into it.
I appreciate that, Coach. And one of the things I look forward to about the pandemic being over or getting better as we head into the next school year is getting to see your program, all these other great programs around the country, get to play in a more normal environment. I feel very good about where this is heading, and next year feeling pretty normal. I know we'll still be dealing with some of this, but I look forward to seeing fans in the stands at DeVos when you put the streak back on the line in November. And I wish you nothing but success. You've really built a program that Hope alums and fans are proud of. So, Coach, kudos to you, and thanks for all this time today.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your time and good luck with your podcast. I'm happy to be number 10.
Thank you.